So the Capcom Next showcase took place, and there was some relatively great information in regards to the new Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, but also some pretty interesting information in regards to Resident Evil, including the next chapter in the series. So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new here and you'd like to stick around and support the channel, you can leave a comment, subscribe, or hit the bell icon so you get a notification whenever I upload. All of that stuff helps out the channel so much, and it's always appreciated. So starting off first with that Resident Evil information, they sat down with Koshi Nakanishi, who is the director of Resident Evil 7, and he did a lot of reflecting on the position that Capcom was in when they were creating RE7 and how the space they were in was not good. They took Resident Evil in a direction where they felt like it had really gone off track, and they expanded a lot on the action, which was received negatively from a lot of the fans. And to be fair, there was a lot going into RE6 that a lot of people, including myself, just didn't like. The game itself was just kind of all over the place. It didn't really know what it wanted to be, and those separate campaigns were trying to please everyone, and they ended up not pleasing anyone. It was just a really all over the place messy game. So they had to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch to create a game that at its core was scary. That's what Resident Evil is. It's super fun and goofy and cheesy, but at its core it has to have those moments that scare you. And that's how they ended up getting RE7 and, you know, coming up with the first person perspective instead of relying on third person over the shoulder, because first person just naturally feels much more scary because you are in the shoes of the character. And I just thought that was a really great reflection. It shows how they were very serious about making sure that the quality of Resident Evil got back on track, because RE6, as messy as it was, did sell really well. And they could have easily just continued that direction with RE7, but they said, no, we need to fix this. And then at the very end of this whole showcase, he dropped some pretty big information by saying that he and his team are working on the next official Resident Evil. He doesn't call it Resident Evil 9, but he says they're working on the next RE. And he says that what he and his team have found is pretty substantial. And this is really great news because Capcom has actually officially acknowledged the next Resident Evil, whatever that may be, which is nice because so many rumors have been flying over these past few months from unreliable sources about, you know, Resident Evil getting a remake of the original remake. They're gonna do Code Veronica, they're gonna do RE0, RE9 is going to have this character in this location, and it's going to be this type of game. And it's just all of this really crazy, unreliable information from unreliable people for the most part. So to have Capcom actually acknowledge that, yeah, we're working on the next RE is great. Unfortunately, they couldn't divulge any information on what that next game would be just yet, but if they're willing to announce it now, then hopefully sometime by the end of the year, we could get an idea of what that next RE is going to be. But it seems like the team that did RE7 will be handling whatever the next Resident Evil is, whether it's Part 9 or a new subtitled game. So I'm really looking forward to that. And again, just hearing that self-reflection from the developers at Capcom and knowing that they need to make something good, not just something that makes a lot of money. That happened recently with a Street Fighter 6 video where the developers were talking about that game and how Street Fighter 5 was just super messy and off track, and they had to come in and save it, and they really took their time to polish their ideas for Street Fighter 6. 2 full years when they were crafting Street Fighter 6, and they ended up with one of the best fighting games in a very long time. So that is awesome. With the Resident Evil stuff out of the way, let's get to Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, starting with the release dates. Now this is actually going to be a staggered release, with the digital version coming out on September 19th and the physical coming out on November of 2024. No specific date, just November of this year. It'll be coming out on PS5, the Xbox Series family of consoles, and Steam, which is great. And they're also going to be doing a digital deluxe edition of the Deluxe Remaster, which is a mouthful. It's going to have 17 costumes for Frank, including the original 2006 Frank West costume and a Chuck Green costume. And Chuck was the main protagonist of Dead Rising 2. And they're also going to include 17 different background tracks to play in the Willamette Mall as you're running around, which is super cool. No idea how much that's going to cost, but they are packing it full of content, which is really nice. Now in this showcase, they gave us a pretty beefy update on what the deluxe remaster of Dead Rising actually is. And starting off first, it's a new coat of paint, new graphics that allow the game to run at 4K 60 frames per second, and it looks really good. Frank's character model does look a bit weird. I'm so used to his 06 version that his redesigned face is a little jarring, but all of the other characters tend to look pretty good based on what they've shown. The NPCs, the enemies all look great. They're also introducing some quality of life improvements, like being able to move while you're aiming your weapon, including overall movements for Frank just to make him feel a little bit more intuitive as you control him as the player. They've also incorporated an autosave feature, which, thank God, based on what I remember playing in the OG Dead Rising, there were so many situations where things just went sideways, and if you didn't save your game, you were kind of screwed. So having an autosave feature to kind of back you up is really nice. They've retuned the user interface as well, which of course is needed. This game came out originally on the 360. Things were different back then. So cleaning that up, maybe simplifying it a little bit more, makes it easier to navigate. And that does remind me too of, I remember when the OG Dead Rising came out, if you played that game on a standard def CRT, you could not read the subtitles. The subtitles were made specifically for HD television, so they were super small on a CRT. They looked fine on an HD TV, but you had to squint if you were playing on a CRT, which is kind of funny. They've also, thankfully, improved the AI behavior for the NPC, so hopefully that means that an NPC won't run into a group of zombies and get themselves murdered, and hopefully that'll make it easier on us, the players, to actually navigate this mall, save NPCs, save more people, and have less of a headache when it comes to trying to, get our lemmings into a safe area. Now, even with all of these changes, they still wanted to remain respectful to the original core concept of Dead Rising, which is taking Frank West, dropping him into a mall and having him fight tons of zombies while also trying to uncover this mystery and also try and help whoever he can come across. So that's still there. None of the story stuff has been changed. It's still the same Dead Rising. It's just going to look a lot better. Now, one of the topics they brought up with the original Dead Rising is how they compared it to Resident Evil, where when it came to the zombie aspect, the monsters, Resident Evil focused a lot more on quality over quantity, and Dead Rising was the reverse. But because of all of the advancements in technology, they can now do quality and quantity for this game, which means that all of the characters and the zombies all look incredible. And some of these close-up shots of the zombies look insane. It's like something you would see out of, RE2 remake. All of this blood and gore and viscera and detail in the face of a zombie who just had their cheek ripped off looks ridiculously good. And so do a lot of the enemies and NPCs. They've also implemented a real-time lighting situation that will change depending on the time of the day. That also includes some really great shadow effects. So depending on where you are in the mall, it might be nighttime and it's going to look different than it did in the day. And I really love these types of real-time lighting systems because it just changes the vibe of the area that you're in. And one of the locations they showed was a section of the mall, which, it's bright, it looks kind of boring during the day, but then at night, most of the lights in the mall shut off. And then some of those secondary lights within the stores stay on. So you have these bright stars kind of illuminating sections of the mall. It looks really good. It's really going to help change up the vibe and atmosphere of each location, especially since Willamette Mall is massive. It's not just a tiny mall. There's so many different sections and stores and like back rooms that you can go to. And they really made sure to clean up these locations and add even more personality and character to them when it came to their design. So being able to go back and change things and make them look better and more vibrant, I think is always a great thing. Now, they also said that they didn't really touch the character animations, which I very much appreciate. So those have mostly remained unchanged, especially the action movements. And I'm really happy that they did that because the original Dead Rising is a very goofy game. They take this character of Frank West, who's not an action man, he's not a soldier, he's not a rookie cop. He's a journalist. He's trying to uncover the truth. So he's in this location as a regular person, and he's probably doing what we would do if we were in that same scenario. And that includes taking buckets and putting them on a zombie's head or running zombies over with a shopping cart. It's a very goofy game, which zombie stuff can inherently be really funny, whether it's, black humor or a little bit more on the goofy, lighter side. And that's Dead Rising. It does still have its heart. It has some sad, scary moments, but overall, it's a really silly game. game. And I think if you changed up the animations of Frank attacking or being hit, it might take away from that goofiness that I really appreciate from the OG Dead Rising. You know, Frank could get hit by, you know, a moving object and suddenly he's doing 8 million rotations in the air before he lands on the ground. It's just inherently really silly, but that's so part of the DNA of Dead Rising in terms of its visuals and its animations. So I think it's really important that they keep all that stuff as close to the original as possible. And again, some of that includes preservation. You know, you want to update this game, but you don't want to change it too much. You still want to have some of those great original aspects preserved as much as humanly possible. So this is pretty much as close to a full-on remake as you can get for Dead Rising. It's pretty much, I think, a remaster done right. They changed what they needed to change, made quality of life improvements, updated the graphics, made some of the controls and interface better, but it's still that original Dead Rising that we all know and love. So with that being said, that is the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of the Capcom Next Summer Showcase. Are you excited with the news in regards to Resident Evil? And what are you hoping to see in the next installment of that franchise? Do you want it to be super scary with a little bit of action, or do you want a nice blend of the two? And what are your guys' overall thoughts on the changes they've been making to Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster? It looks pretty sick. I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.